The incident, the cargo ship Lucky Star docked at Station Alpha 7 with a soft hiss of airlocks connecting. Captain Rick stepped out of his small vessel, stretching his arms after the long journey from Earth's outer colonies. The trading station buzzed with activity as dozens of alien species moved through the corridors, conducting business and preparing for their next journeys. Rick had been making these supply runs for 3 years now. He knew the routine well: dock, unload cargo, grab a meal, refuel, and head to the next destination. The pay was decent, and he enjoyed the peaceful nature of space trading. Most aliens were friendly enough, though they always seemed a bit too polite around humans. The main corridor of Station Alpha 7 stretched out before him like a metal canyon. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians glided past on their long legs, their large eyes scanning data tablets. Small, furry creatures called Kep scurried between the legs of larger beings, carrying packages and messages. Near the docking bays, massive rock-like beings called Granite worked as laborers, their stone hands perfect for heavy lifting. Rick made his way to the food court, a large open area where different species could find meals suited to their biology. The air was filled with strange smells, some pleasant, others making him wrinkle his nose. He found a human food vendor, run by an elderly man named Pete, who had been living on the station for years. The usual? Pete asked, already preparing a simple meal of protein bars and synthesized vegetables. "You know it," Rick replied, sitting at a nearby table. He pulled out his data pad to check his next delivery schedule. That's when the trouble started. 3 insect-like creatures approached his table. They were Vex, tall, thin beings with multiple arms and compound eyes. Rick had dealt with Vex traders before. They were usually business-focused and rarely caused problems. "Human," the lead Vex said, his voice clicking and buzzing. "You are Rick of the cargo ship Lucky Star." "That's right," Rick replied, looking up from his datapad. "Do we have business?" The Vex's compound eyes flickered with what Rick assumed was anger. "Yes, we have business. Your kind has been stealing our trade routes, taking contracts that should belong to Vex," Rick frowned. "I don't know what you're talking about. I just deliver supplies where I'm told to deliver them." "Lies," another Vex hissed. "Humans always lie. You take the best routes, the highest payments, leave nothing for honest traders." Around them, other aliens had stopped eating and were watching the confrontation. Rick noticed something strange. Instead of looking curious or entertained, they looked worried. Some were even backing away from the area. "Look," Rick said, standing up slowly. "I don't want any trouble. If there's a problem with trade routes, take it up with the station management." The lead Vex moved closer, his multiple arms twitching. "No, the problem is with you, with all humans. You think you are special, but you are just another species." Rick felt a chill run down his spine. The entire food court had gone silent. Even the background hum of the station seemed quieter. Every alien in the area was staring at them, but their expressions were not what Rick expected. Instead of curiosity, he saw fear. "I'm going to leave now," Rick said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I don't want any trouble." But as he tried to walk away, the Vex grabbed his arm with one of his sharp, chitinous hands. The grip was tight and painful. "You will not leave until you agree to give up your trade routes," the Vex demanded. That's when Rick heard something that made his blood run cold, a sharp, piercing alarm that echoed through the entire station. Not the soft chime of a shift change or the gentle tone of an announcement. This was an emergency alarm, urgent and frightening. Within seconds, the food court was swarming with station security. But they weren't coming to break up a simple fight. They were moving with the speed and precision of a military unit responding to a catastrophic emergency. "Release the human immediately," the security chief shouted. He was a massive Granite, his stone face set in an expression of absolute authority. The Vex looked confused, but didn't let go of Rick's arm. This is a simple trade dispute. We are handling it ourselves. Release him now, or face immediate detention and trial, the security chief repeated. Rick watched in amazement as more security forces arrived. At least 20 armed guards surrounded the small group, their weapons drawn and ready. For a simple grabbed arm, it seemed like an incredible overreaction. The Vex finally released Rick, stepping back with his hands raised. I do not understand. What crime have we committed? The security chief's stone face somehow managed to look even more serious. You have harmed a human. That is a violation of Galactic Code 77 Alpha. You will be detained immediately pending trial. As the Vex were led away in restraints, Rick stood in the center of the food court, completely bewildered. Around him, dozens of aliens watched with expressions he couldn't quite read. There was fear there, yes, but also something else. Something that looked almost like respect. The security chief approached him, his massive form towering over Rick. Are you injured, human? No, Rick said, still confused. I'm fine, but I don't understand what just happened. The security chief's expression softened slightly. Perhaps. It is better that you do not understand. But I advise you to leave the station soon. Word of this incident will spread quickly. As Rick gathered his things and headed back to his ship, he couldn't shake the feeling that something much bigger was happening. Something that everyone knew about except him. Asterisk. The investigation. 3 days later, Rick found himself on the planet Centros, the galactic capital where his friend Mike worked as a trade coordinator. Mike had been dealing with alien governance for 5 years and knew more about galactic politics than most humans. If anyone could explain what happened at Station Alpha 7, it would be him. They met at a small cafe in the human quarter of Central City. Mike was a tall, thin man with tired eyes and graying hair. He listened carefully as Rick told him about the incident with the Vex traders. So the entire station security force showed up because one alien grabbed your arm? Mike asked, stirring his coffee slowly. That's right. And they called it a violation of some galactic code. The security chief acted like it was the most serious crime he'd ever seen. Mike was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the busy street. Aliens and humans moved together through the city, but Rick noticed something he'd never paid attention to before. The aliens always gave humans plenty of space. They were polite, almost deferential. I've noticed things too, Mike said finally. In all my years working with alien governments, they've never once raised their voices at me, never argued strongly about anything. At first, I thought it was just their culture. But now you think it's something else? I think they're afraid of us, Rick. All of them. Rick laughed. That's crazy. We're just humans. We're not even the strongest species in the galaxy. Those granite beings could crush us with one hand. Physical strength isn't everything, Mike said. There's something else going on here. Something they don't want us to know about. Mike leaned forward, lowering his voice. I have access to some galactic records through my job. Want to do some digging? An hour later, they were in Mike's office, a small room filled with data screens and communication equipment. Mike pulled up the Galactic Historical Database and began searching for information about humans and galactic law. Look at this, Mike said, pointing to his screen. There are dozens of laws specifically about humans. Protection codes, interaction protocols, trade regulations. But here's the weird part. Most of the historical context is classified. Rick looked over his shoulder. What do you mean classified? I mean there are huge gaps in the data. Entire sections about human history that have been marked as restricted information. Only high-level government officials can access them. They spent the next 2 hours searching through different databases. Every time they found something that might explained humanity's special status. The information was either missing or classified. It was like someone had deliberately erased parts of galactic history. "This is getting strange," Rick said. "It's like they're hiding something big." Mike nodded. "I have an idea. There's an old maintenance worker named Bob who's been working in the Galactic Archives for 20 years. He's human, but he's been here so long that he might know things that aren't in the official records." They found Bob in the basement of the government building, sorting through old data storage units. He was a small, elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle smile. But when Mike explained what they were looking for, Bob's expression grew serious. "You boys should be careful asking questions like that," Bob said, looking around nervously. "There are some things that are better left alone. But you know something, don't you?" Rick asked. Bob was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I know enough to understand why the aliens treat us the way they do. But I also know that talking about it could get me in a lot of trouble." "Please," Mike said. "We just want to understand." "Something happened to Rick that doesn't make sense." Bob looked at them both carefully. "If I tell you what I know, you have to promise me something. Promise me that you'll be very careful with this information. It's not just about you, it's about all of humanity." Rick and Mike exchanged glances. "We promise," Rick said. Bob nodded slowly. "Okay, but not here. Too many ears in this building. Meet me tomorrow night at the old observatory outside the city. And don't tell anyone where you're going." As they left the government building, Rick felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Whatever secret the galaxy was keeping about humans, it was big enough to make a kind old man afraid to talk about it in public. "Are you sure we want to know?" Mike asked as they walked back to his apartment. Rick thought about the fear in the aliens' eyes at the trading station. He thought about the massive security response to a simple grab. He thought about all the classified information and the gaps in galactic history. "Yes," he said finally. "I need to know why everyone is so afraid of us." The next evening, as the sun set over Central City, Rick and Mike drove to the old observatory. They had no idea that their search for answers was about to reveal the most closely guarded secret in galactic civilization. Behind them, in the shadows of the city, other eyes watched their departure. Some secrets were worth killing to protect, and Rick and Mike were about to discover just how dangerous the truth could be. The truth revealed the old observatory sat on a hill outside Central City, its dome dark against the starry sky. Rick and Mike arrived just as the last light faded from the horizon. Bob was already there, waiting by the entrance with a small flashlight in his hand. "Follow me," Bob said quietly. "We need to go somewhere private." He led them inside the abandoned building and up a winding staircase to the observation deck. The old telescope still pointed at the stars, but dust covered everything. Bob checked to make sure they were alone, then turned to face them. "What I'm about to tell you happened 50 years ago," Bob began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Most humans don't know about it. The galactic government made sure of that." Rick and Mike sat on old chairs, listening carefully. Back then, humans were just another species in the galaxy. We weren't special or important. Earth was a small planet that most aliens ignored. We had basic space travel, but nothing compared to the advanced civilizations out there. Bob walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Then came the Drex. "Who were the Drex?" Mike asked. "A warrior species. They were big, strong, and had the most powerful military in the galaxy. They conquered planets for fun, enslaved weaker species, and no one could stop them. The galactic government was too afraid to fight them." Bob's voice grew darker. "The Drex decided that Earth would be their next target. They thought humans would be easy to defeat. We had no big space fleet, no advanced weapons. Just a small, primitive planet with people who had never fought a real war. Rick felt a chill run down his spine. What happened? They attacked Earth. With everything they had. Hundreds of warships, millions of soldiers. They destroyed New York, London, Tokyo. Killed 20 million people in the first week. Bob turned back to them, his eyes filled with old pain. The Galactic government watched. It happened. They sent messages of sympathy, but no help. They thought it would be over in a month. But it wasn't, Mike said quietly. No, it wasn't. The Drex made a mistake. They thought killing millions of humans would make the rest surrender. Instead, it made them angry. Angrier than any species had ever been. Bob sat down heavily. I was a young man then, working on Mars Colony. I watched the news feeds as Earth fought back. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up. Humans didn't just fight back. They fought with a fury that terrified everyone who saw it. They turned their mining equipment into weapons. They used their cargo ships as attack vessels. They fought in space, on the ground, in the cities, in the wilderness. Rick leaned forward. Did Earth win? Bob's smile was cold. Earth didn't just win. They destroyed the Drex completely. Every last one of them. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Mike stared at Bob in disbelief. That's impossible. The Drex were the most powerful military force in the galaxy. That's what everyone thought. But humans had something the Drex didn't understand. When we're threatened, really threatened, we don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure the threat never comes back. Bob stood up and began pacing. The war lasted 3 years. In that time, humans went from having no space navy to building the most feared fleet in galactic history. They didn't just defend Earth. They hunted down every Drex ship, every Drex colony, every Drex outpost. By the end of the war, there were no more Drex anywhere. Humans had wiped them out so completely that most species today don't even remember they existed. Rick felt sick. We committed genocide? The galactic government didn't see it that way. They saw it as the most efficient military campaign in recorded history. Humans had taken the most dangerous species in the galaxy and erased them in 3 years. Bob stopped pacing and looked at them both. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is what happened after. What do you mean? Mike asked. The Galactic Council studied the war records. They wanted to understand how humans had won so completely. What they found terrified them. Bob's voice dropped to a whisper. Humans hadn't fought the Drex like soldiers. They'd fought like something else. Something that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bargained with, couldn't be stopped. They'd fought like a force of nature. The Council realized that humans weren't just another species. We were something new. Something that could destroy entire civilizations if we felt threatened enough. Rick stood up, his legs shaking. So they decided to make sure we never felt threatened again. Bob nodded. They created the Human Protection Protocols. Laws that made it illegal for any species to harm a human. They figured it was safer to keep us happy than to risk making us angry. But why keep it secret? Mike asked. Because they didn't want humans to know how much they feared us. They were afraid that if we knew the truth, we might decide to use our power for conquest instead of defense. As Bob finished speaking, the 3 men stood in silence, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations lived, in fear of the species that had once been considered weak and primitive. Now you know, Bob said quietly. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? The galactic decision, Bob led Rick and Mike to a dusty storage room in the basement of the observatory. He pulled out an old data storage device and connected it to a portable screen. I saved some records from those days, he said. Things the government wanted to destroy. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage of a massive meeting. Hall. Hundreds of aliens sat in curved rows, their faces tense with worry. At the center, a tall blue Altarian stood at a podium. "This is the emergency session of the Galactic Council," Bob explained. 3 months after the Drex War ended, they were deciding what to do about humans. Rick watched as the Altarian Council leader began to speak. "We have gathered to discuss the human situation. Our military analysts have completed their study of the recent conflict." Another alien, an insect-like being similar to the Vex, stood up. "The humans destroyed the Drex in record time. A species that had conquered 50 worlds was eliminated completely. How is this possible?" A third alien, one of the rock-like granite species, answered. "Our scientists studied human behavior during the war. They found something disturbing. Humans do not fight like other species." The footage showed charts and diagrams appearing on screens around the hall. Bob paused the video and pointed to the data. "Look at these numbers. They show how other species fight wars compared to humans." Rick studied the charts. "I don't understand what I'm seeing." "Most species fight until they achieve their goals," Bob explained. "If they want territory, they fight until they get it. If they want resources, they fight until they control them. But humans ... He pointed to a different chart. "Humans fight until the threat is completely gone, forever. They don't just defeat enemies. They make sure those enemies can never threaten them again." Mike shook his head. "That sounds like basic military strategy." "No, it's not," Bob said firmly. "Watch the rest." He started the video again. The Altarian Council leader continued speaking. "The humans did not capture Drex territory. They did not enslave Drex populations. They did not negotiate surrender terms. They simply eliminated every Drex in existence." A small, furry alien stood up. "Perhaps the humans were angry about the deaths on Earth. Revenge is a common motivation. Our psychologists studied this possibility," the granite replied. "They found that human anger was not the primary factor. The humans were following a deeper instinct." The council leader activated another display. "Humans have a unique psychological trait. When they perceive an existential threat, they enter what their own scientists call survival mode. In this state, they become capable of actions that other species cannot comprehend." Rick watched as the footage showed human soldiers during the war. They moved with a cold, calculated efficiency that made him uncomfortable. These weren't angry warriors seeking revenge. They were something else entirely. But humans did not fight emotionally, the council leader continued. They fought with perfect logic. They identified the Drex as a threat to human survival. Therefore, the logical solution was to ensure the Drex could never threaten humans again. "By killing all of them," Mike whispered. Bob nodded. "Every last one. Men, women, children, elderly. The humans didn't see them as people. They saw them as a problem to be solved." The video showed more debate among the council members. Some argued that humans should be destroyed before they became a threat to other species. Others suggested they should be isolated on Earth and prevented from traveling to other worlds. Finally, an elderly alien that Rick didn't recognize stood up. "I have a different proposal. We should ensure that humans never feel threatened again." The hall fell silent. The elderly alien continued. "The humans are not naturally aggressive. They only become dangerous when they believe their survival is at stake. If we can guarantee their safety and prosperity, they will remain peaceful." "You suggest we protect them?" the council leader asked. "I suggest we make harming a human the most serious crime in galactic law. We establish protocols that ensure human safety throughout known space. We give them favorable trade agreements, safe passage, and respect." Another alien objected. "That would make them a privileged species. Other civilizations will resent this treatment. Better resentment than extinction," the elderly alien replied. We have two choices. We can try to fight the humans and risk sharing the fate of the Drex, or we can ensure they never have reason to fight us. The video showed the council taking a vote. The result was unanimous. The human protection protocols were established. Bob turned off the device and looked at Rick and Mike. That was 50 years ago. Since then, every species in the galaxy has known the truth except humans themselves. Why? Rick asked. Why keep it secret from us? Because the council was afraid of what might happen if humans knew how much fear they inspired. They worried that humans might decide to use that fear to dominate the galaxy. Mike stood up and walked to the window. So we're not protected because we're special or important. We're protected because everyone is terrified of us. That's right, Bob said. Every alien who treats you with respect, every favorable trade, deal, every safe passage through dangerous space, it's all because they're afraid of what humans might do if they felt threatened. Rick felt the weight of this knowledge settling on his shoulders. We're not the good guys in this story, are we? Bob's smile was sad. That depends on your perspective. To the Drex, humans were monsters. To the rest of the galaxy, humans are a force of nature that must be carefully managed. But to humans themselves, ... double quotes, he paused, looking at both men. To humans, we're just people trying to survive in a dangerous universe. The question is, what kind of people do we want to be now? That we know the truth?